Welcome to Studio SX. We're here at South by Southwest 2009 in Austin, Texas. My name is Matt Dentler, and former producer of South by Southwest Film Festival, and I currently work at Cinetic Rights Management. Joined today by no stranger to South by Southwest, Mr. Joe Swanberg. Hello, Joe.
Hi.
Joe is here with, you're here with your film, Alexander the Last,
Yes.
which is premiering here at South by Southwest, but it's also a very unique opportunity, not only for you, but also for audiences, because it's premiering simultaneously at this festival, but it's also being made available on cable VOD on a special South by Southwest channel, which is really great. It's really exciting. For you, this is your fifth consecutive South by Southwest with your fifth consecutive film. Does the experience, how has the experience changed, from that first year to now? I mean, there are five very different films.
Yeah.
Do you just kind of assume you're always going to be coming back to South by Southwest?
I don't. I was really nervous, and I never do. And the four that I sent to you, I had the same nervous feeling each time. But what's been great is that each time that I've come, we've found some way to make the experience different. So Kissing on the Mouth was in Emerging Visions, and then you put LOL in Competition, which created a new experience around that.
Yeah.
Then with Hannah, it was like a spotlight premiere.
Yeah.
And then with Nights and Weekends, when we talked about that, it was like made sense to put it back into smaller venues and do something different. And now this year with Alexander, it's got the VOD sort of tie-in, so it's been really fun.
And a lot of publicity as well leading into it, which
this
has been
year
great.
especially.
I mean, the reviews have been really good. It seems like people, who might have been sort of late to the party are coming to now say, oh, this Joe Swanberg guy has some talent. How is that for
finally.
you? Yeah,
I've finally shown some talent.
Yeah, I mean, how does that feel for you that, there were people who, maybe dismissed your earlier films that now it took, this film for them to come out?
It's interesting because if I feel, I want everybody to like the work, so it feels nice that people who haven't liked the previous films like this one.
Right.
It's also strange, though, because I can't really feel complimented by a review that its whole basis is that they like this film but did not like any of the, like that this is the first one that's had anything even decent in it.
Well, what's funny is it seems like with each film, there is this sort of sense of like, oh, hey, there's this new guy, Joe Swanberg.
Yeah.
Even like with every film, though, it's like people kind of come out of the woodworks.
Right.
It's like the first film was a nice launching pad, and then the second and the third and the fourth, and it's almost like everyone talks about sort of film journalism going away, but it almost feels like since blogs and all that stuff are taking over, there's more and more new Joe Swanberg champions being born every minute, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, lots of people, myself especially, have been fans of your work and are really excited about the attention that Alexander's getting. Why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit? I mean, for the making of this film, it was a slightly different production process.
It was, yeah. Well, what I tried to do, what was sort of the beginning of what made this process different is that for the last several films I've been working with Anish Savjani, who I'm working with again on this project, but we brought in Noah Baumbach as a producer.
Right, and Noah
we didn't bring him in,
you realize that you both like each other's
exactly,
work.
Like he and I sort of started an email correspondence, and he had seen Hannah Takes the Stairs and really liked it. So I sent him Nights and Weekends, and I had just seen Margot at the Wedding, and so it started just as a sort of friendly chit-chat about each other's work and just sort of about what was going on. But then, when I said that I was going to work on a new project, he was interested in helping, and so it was sort of a nice for somebody new for Anish and I to sort of bounce ideas off of, to go into the production with somebody who had different connections that we did, to start to look for actors. Jane Addams is in the film, and Josh Hamilton is in the film. Those are people that came straight from Noah and Jennifer, are friends of theirs, and have worked with them in the past. And so, it sort of opened up my world a little bit. And then also, as we shot the film, Noah was somebody who was looking at footage and working with me during the editing, and sort of, was a creative producer in a sense. Not so much a nuts and bolts kind of producer. And so that was interesting too. I mean, Anish and I have always had a relationship where he watches the cuts and we have that sort of creative discussion, and bringing in another, just another set of eyes, and somebody who makes their own work and is sort of familiar with the production process was really fun for me. It was also challenging, you know.
Well, I was going to say it probably made you work harder than you've probably.
It definitely did.
But because there was so much more. I wouldn't say at stake probably, but there were more people invested.
There were more people invested, and also I'm used to. You know, I mean, Anish and I have shorthand by this point,
right.
So I'm used to, you know, he and I sort of like the kind of notes that we give each other and the way that we talk about the work has, you know, has sort of streamlined itself, and to have Noah involved now was like forced both of us, I think, to sort of like reset back a little bit and approach the work in a different way.
So the premise of the film is something that I know just as a friend is something that's, you know, very, you know, connected to your own life.
Sure.
Because it's basically, I mean, it's about artists who are in, you know, committed relationships or married,
yeah.
and how they sort of divide their life or their emotions or their consciousness into, you know, figuring out how to keep that line from being too blurred between sort of your personal life and your creative.
That's right.
I mean, you've made autobiographical films that are sort of based on your experiences.
Yeah.
For you, how was this sort of different, especially now that you're married?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's sort of funny because it's probably the most personal of all the films that I've made, and in another way, the least personal in the sense that I was working with professional actors to very much make a structured film, you know? So it's like, with the first couple of projects, they were very documentary style, like completely handheld camera work, very on the fly, sort of usually only doing a scene once or twice. That kind of work felt very personal to me a certain way, even if the stories weren't necessarily my own, just because the experience was so intimate.
Sure, yeah.
On this one, the experience was a lot less intimate, but the emotions that we were getting after were a lot more personal. So it sort of balanced itself out in a way. But you know, this film is such a direct reference and reflection on the making of the previous films too. You know, just on that experience of sort of forming these little families, and you know, having done that 4 times before, and also on the web shows, having those be their own experience.
Right.
You know, I just like had reached a point where my own feelings on that had solidified a lot. You know,
how do you think that's going to change? This experience is going to change your feature film work going forward?
Sure. It already is changing it. I'm working on a new film now, and the way that I'm shooting it is different. And
can you tell us about that at all?
I can, sure. It's called Silver Bullets, and it's another. You know, in a lot of ways, it's another film about artists and art, but you know, it's also about the sort of the changing world that we're living in. It's about, you know, formats dying and companies going out of business and people getting older, and you know, there's a lot of just generally a lot of confusion right now, I think. And I wanted to make a film about artists who are dealing with that. You know, so Jane Addams is in this film, and she's playing an actress who's the older version of a younger actress in the film. You know, so they're working on a project that sort of spans you know, several decades, and so it's sort of about Jane dealing with that, being sort of like now like being cast as like the older version of a younger actress, but then also looking at the younger actress's relationship, you know, sort of in a place where she's a lot less stable than Jane's character is in a lot of ways.
That's great. I mean, you know, it's really exciting because I think people feel that, you know, you're achieving that mainstream acceptance that a lot of us thought you had achieved a couple years ago, but it seems like you're just keep shattering that. You know, and you have lots of people who love your work, but there are some people who are like passionately outraged by your work, especially in the blogosphere, since it's very, you know, democratized. How do you deal with that? Because I know you're tuned in. I know you're online. How do you deal with like somebody deciding to write a whole blog post about how they don't like your film?
Well, I deal with it in several ways. I used to, I mean, early on I sort of felt like there's some sort of energy that you get when you feel like a lot of people are against you, I think. You can sort of rally the troops, and everybody can have a common sort of cause, an enemy. And, you know, I mean, there's something actually positive about that. And I feel like with the first couple movies, we felt united against a misperception of the work or something. We were making films about young people in a way that, you know, was sort of truer to YouTube and MySpace and these things than to sort of a Hollywood convention. And so when people wrote bad reviews, it was very easy to say, they just don't get it. Or we're not making it for them.
Their generation.
They're not tuned into it. And I mean, now that the work's changing a little bit, I think that people are opening up to it in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
The photography in this new film is, it's much more conventional, in a sense. The story is much more conventional, and the performances are closer to movie performances.
But are you doing that to appease these critics?
I'm not. What's happened is, there's actually no reason for me to be making work in the way that I used to. Because when I made Kissing on the Mouth, when we were shooting in 2004, YouTube did not exist.
Right.
Facebook was only being used by certain college kids. And we weren't living in a world where this sort of intimacy was being immediately shared the way it is now. So the work that I was making then was sort of plugging into, it was filling a hole that I thought was missing from media. Now that's not missing anymore.
Right.
And so I feel as a filmmaker that if I'm not changing and continuing to make work that's filling holes, in sort of the landscape, that there's no reason to be doing it. So it wasn't. It definitely wasn't a reaction to the reviews. It was like a reaction to the way that the cultural landscape shifted.
Well, that's good.
But what's interesting now is that a lot of the people who didn't respond to the early work are suddenly responding to this one.
And so it's a nice coincidence.
Yeah, it's like a side effect.
Sure.
But it's cool because hopefully the people who were into the earlier movies just see the logical progression. That it's not that I'm not turning my back on the earlier
your
work
roots.
at all. Yeah.
You didn't sell out.
Right.
So South by Southwest, what has that? It's celebrating its 25th anniversary coming up. How is that? Well, what has South by sort of meant for you as an artist?
Well, it's been. I think that like probably all filmmakers, I'm very fragile when I finish a new film, and I'm very nervous about the reception. It's been so great for me to be able to premiere all the films here. Even if I'm not sure that the audience is going to love what I'm doing, the people in Austin and the people who come to South by Southwest are coming to see films, and I think they're coming in with an attitude that they want to like the work.
Right.
And that's just so important, because even if they don't like the work, as a filmmaker, I can feel that attitude. It's a generous attitude, and it's like a safe place to premiere your work.
Good.
And the city of Austin has been really important to me too. I mean, I've lived in Chicago this whole time, but like, I feel like this has become my second home, and I belong as much to the filmmaking community here as I do anywhere else in the world. More so even than Chicago, where I live. Like I sort of go there and I'm isolated in my apartment and I'm sort of working on things and editing and stuff. It's usually when I come here that I'm tapping into the creative community that I really feel like I belong to.
So will Silver Bullets be ready for South by 2010?
I hope so. Hopefully it'll be ready even sooner than that. I'm running into this thing that, you and I sort of joked about it and talked about it a few years ago, and it's now finally happening, where I think that the movies are going to start backing up behind each other, and that it's actually, like, time-wise going to become impossible to premiere all of the films here, just because unless they want to be showing like 2 or 3 movies each year,
right.
which
They're doing
just
the Joe
seems ridiculous.
Swanberg, like, future perspective.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'll sort of see how this one is coming together, but it's already like a permanently marked week on my calendar for the rest of my life. I will be in Austin during South by Southwest, whether I have a film here, whether I have 2 films here, or whether they don't even want me around. I'll still be sneaking.
You'll
around.
be like sneaking into screens.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Joe, and have a great screening.
Thank you.
Everybody give it up for Joe Swanberg. Thanks.